Welcome everyone to this Pride House Tokyo Legacy online event, where we look to reach out to people outside Japan for hints and advice on how other nations are fighting for marriage equality, as well as checking in with experts here on how it's proceeding in this country. Today we are reaching out to Switzerland, which recently have seen legislation passed to the Swiss parliament in favor of same-sex marriage. Though even more recently as April 10th, and we will hear more about this later, the opposition has gathered enough votes to call for a referendum on the subject. So it's not yet a foregone conclusion or victory for the LGBTQ plus community there. Meanwhile, in Japan, as many of us know, we have had a significant development with the Sapporo District Court saying that it was unconstitutional that same-sex partners could not marry. The verdict is a bit more complicated than that, but we will be hearing more about that too. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our two speakers today. Please welcome Salome Zimmermann, former president of Switzerland's Marriage for All campaign community, and Takeharu Kato, one of the lawyers at the Hokkaido Marriage for All trial. Thank you both for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we start, let me also thank the Swiss Embassy in Tokyo. They're a Pride House Tokyo Legacy sponsor for organizing and helping out this event. So first, Salome, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and the Marriage for All campaign in your beautiful Alpine nation, and also where this campaign is going now that the referendum has been called for?
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be invited to this talk. Unfortunately, I've never stayed in Japan, but I promise I will do that as soon as it's possible to travel again. I'm very glad that the Tokyo Pride House picked up this topic. Then I think that same-sex marriage is one of the most important points towards equality of LGBT people. To my person, I'm 65 years old, which gives me the privilege to be retired and to have time for all the things I like to do. I was working as a judge at the Federal Administrative Court, where I presided the first section. My partner Anja lives in Germany, and from the point of view of the topic we are now talking about, that's very interesting. We got married in Germany, as Germany knows the same-sex marriage, but as Switzerland has only so far a registered partnership, my wife and me don't have the same civil status. She is married, and I live in a registered partnership. And to make the story even more fun, every time when I cross the border between Germany and Switzerland, I change my civil status, because in Germany I'm recognized as married, and in Switzerland I'm not. So the law we are proceeding now will change that, and we will both be married. We will have in Switzerland a nationwide vote on the same-sex marriage, or as we call it, on marriage for all, which meant marriage for all people, for same-sex couples and for heterosexual couples. To come to this point was not very easy. It's a long story. It lasted 23 years. As you see here, in 1998, there was the first advance for a civil status for same-sex couples in Parliament. I have to mention that beginning the 1990s, the Northern European countries started introducing same-sex marriage, or as some of the states called it, a registered partnership for same-sex couples. So the topic was brought up in legislation in Europe. It lasted 6 years until the Parliament accepted the so-called law on registered partnership. I will revert to the differences between, say, registered partnership and marriage later. In 2007, this law entered into force. Then also at that time, we had a so-called referendum as the collection of 50,000 signatures. It follows that the voters in Switzerland have to do a vote on new laws. As the registered partnership did not provide the same rights to same-sex couples as to heterosexual couples, the story wasn't at the end. And there was a new advance for marriage equality, which means to apply the same law to heterosexual couples as to same-sex couples. And this took again another 7 years until the point we are now staying. The point was that conservative parties had the opinion that to introduce, as we call it, marriage for all, there will be necessary to change the constitution. The constitution in one of the articles uses the word marriage, and the question is whether this notion is applicable only to different sex couples or also to same-sex couples. Expert opinion then came to the conclusion that it's possible to apply the notion marriage also to same-sex couples. So the parliament accepted in December of last year, in 2020, this new law on marriage for all, but also this time conservative parties started collecting signature, and as already mentioned, on April 10, they reached these 50,000 signatures. So we will have a popular vote in this fall, either in September or in November. So you see, it took 23 years to obtain marriage equality. What are the main differences between registered partnership and marriage? First of all, it's the name of the civil status. If you are a same-sex couple, you live in a registered partnership or you are registered. And if you live as a heterosexual couple, you live in a marriage or you are married. So every time when you have to fill in a form your civil status, you have to do a forced outing. And that's not equality. Another important point is that if the husband of a married woman dies, if the widow is over 45, she gets a state pension payment. That's not the case if the wife of a female couple dies, then the widow does not receive state pension payment if she is over 45. The next difference is that same-sex couples can't adopt children, whereas married couples, which for the time being always means heterosexual couples, they can adopt children. And same-sex couple, in this case, that concerns only female couples, they don't have access to artificial insemination and sperm banks, whereas heterosexual couples can take access to artificial insemination and sperm banks. What's now changing with the new law, with the bill we are fighting about? The civil status will be married for everybody, so no more forced outings. The facilitated procedure to obtain Swiss citizenship applies to every foreign husband or wife, not respecting whether it's a same-sex couple or a heterosexual couple. The state pension payments apply to all widows, and the joint adoption of children will be possible for same-sex couples and for heterosexual couples. However, there will stay one difference. That's why I put it in red. Only when a heterosexual couple has a child, from the moment of birth, the wife is the mother of the child and the husband is the father of the child. Nobody asks whether in fact this man was really the father, whether his sperm is the sperm which made the child. In the new law, female couples only get both the mothers of the child from the moment of the birth if to make the child a Swiss sperm bank was used. It's not the case if a foreign sperm bank was used or if the sperm was donated by a private donor. The second wife in the last two cases has to go through an adoption procedure to become a legal relationship to the child. This procedure can only be started 1 year after the birth, and it lasts between 1 and 2 years. So if the mother who gave birth to the child dies in this time, the child will become an orphan. because the second mother doesn't have any legal relationship to the child. And that's one of the big differences. And this has to be changed in future legislation procedure, which the government also promised. You will ask, why did we accept this difference? This difference was a real political compromise. As I already mentioned, the conservative parties had the opinion that to introduce marriage for all, it's necessary to change the constitution and vote in the parliament. We had to accept the difference I already told about, that only insemination in Switzerland, Swiss sperm banks, leads to the real relationship between the second mother and the child. But they promised that they will accept the law like that, and so we could avoid a vote about a change in constitution. So where do we stay in this procedure? Fabrice mentioned it before. The 50,000 signatures were collected and we will have a vote about. What are you doing if there will be a public vote? The 6 nationwide LGB organizations, they are organizing a common political campaign. We have a logo, we have a website, we have social media channels, we have giveaways, all things you need to really win in a political campaign. We organize demonstrations, public discussions and meetings as much as Corona permits it, and we are present on the radio and in television. You see here our logo on buttons. The background colors, I think I don't have to explain. And what's written on these buttons is the formula which is used in marriage procedures before the marriage registrar. The marriage registrar asks, will you marry this woman or will you marry this man? And then the answer is yes, I will. And this formula should apply with the new law also to same-sex couples. So far, when concluding a registered partnership, there is no such formula. You will ask whether there are 4 different buttons. The 4 different buttons are in the 4 different languages of Switzerland, in German, French, Italian, and Rheto-Roman. The same button, but in 4 different languages. Yeah, that's how we stay, and I'm convinced that we will win this vote, because in surveys we had last year, more than 80% of the Swiss population was in favor of same-sex marriage. But nevertheless, as in soccer, the game is only over at the end of the whole time, and so we will see in autumn what's the result, but still we are convinced that we will win.
Thank you, Salome. It's very, very interesting, especially the part where Japan and Switzerland both had this constitutional issue. That's very, very interesting. So Kato-san, can you tell us a bit more about you and the Marriage for All campaign in Japan? Also, personally, I've seen a lot of confusion outside Japan. I've had friends and even family calling me here to congratulate us on marriage equality. Obviously, that's not the case yet. But can you tell us a bit more about that?
Hello, everyone. My name is Takeharu Kato. I'm a lawyer, and I am a practicing lawyer for 17 years in Sapporo, Hokkaido. Hokkaido is the northernmost island in Japan, and I'm also a director of the Marriage for Japan. The Marriage for Japan is a campaign organization for legalizing the same-sex marriage. And also, I'm a member of the legal team for Marriage for All lawsuit in Hokkaido. Today, I want to report on the Sapporo District Court, the decision on the Marriage for All lawsuit in Hokkaido. This is a very huge victory for LGBTQ community in Japan. I want to talk about a little bit on the background of this Sapporo Court ruling. In March 2015, Tokyo's Shibuya Ward passed Japan's first ordinance recognizing same-sex partnership. But this partnership has no legal effect. Just the local government issued the certificate card or certificate papers, which said the relationship between the same-sex couple is equivalent to the married couple, but unfortunately, it is not equivalent to the married couple. And as of the April 1st, 2021, 103 local governments have introduced ordinance or guideline for same-sex partnership recognition, and as of March 31st, 2021, 1,741 couples have registered their own relationship. And after introducing the same-sex partnership, the social change happened. For example, some of the large companies introduced the social service systems for same-sex couples, and some insurance companies recognize the same-sex partners as beneficiaries. And airline companies made it possible for same-sex partners to share the flight miles. And some banks allow same-sex couples to share housing loans. So these kind of the changes happen only in the private sector, not the public sector. But after introducing the same-sex partnership, the social awareness on the same-sex couple and the same-sex marriage is drastically changed. This research is conducted in 2016, and 50% of the respondent is in favor of same-sex marriage, of which 70% in favor among 20s and 30s respondents. So now more than 50% of the Japanese people support the same-sex marriage. That's why we decide to file the Marriage for All lawsuit to legalize the same-sex marriage. In 2019, February 14th, 2019, the lawsuit filed in 4 district courts, Tokyo, Osaka, Nagoya, and Sapporo. And September 5th, 2019, additional lawsuit filed in Fukuoka District Court. In the lawsuit, the plaintiffs claim the law that does not recognize same-sex marriage between persons of the same sex violates the Constitution. And number 2, it is illegal for the Diet, this is the Diet is a parliament, to neglect a law that violates the Constitution. And the Sapporo District Court ruling on March 17th, 2021 is the first ruling of its kind in Japan. And the judgment of the Sapporo District Court says, especially says, in the main text of the judgment says, all of the plaintiffs' claims are dismissed. So we lose because the Diet failure to amend the law is not considered to be illegal. However, the court made a landmark decision that the law which does not give any effect of the marriage to same-sex couples violates the Constitution in the reasons for the decision. Japanese Constitution Article 24, paragraph 1 says, marriage shall be based only on the mutual consent of both sexes. So we insist that the same-sex marriage is also protected based on Article 24, the paragraph 1, and also based on Article 13, all of the people shall be respected as individual. So individual choice must be respected. That's why the same-sex couple must be protected to choose to get married. And Article 14, paragraph 1 says, all the people are equal under the law. Therefore, if the opposite sex couple can marry, but the same-sex couple cannot marry, this is a discrimination, and it violates the Article 14, paragraph 1. And the judgment of the Sapporo District Court says that as for Article 24 and Article 13, the freedom to marry is worthy of the respect in light of purpose of Article 24, paragraph 1 of the Constitution. However, in light of the recognition of the homosexuality and the same-sex marriage at the time it was enacted, this is 1949 or something, and the use of the phrases such as both sexes, the Article 24, paragraph 1 says the marriage is based on the consent and the mutual consent of the both sexes, and the both sexes means man and woman. And also Article 24 says the husband and wife. Therefore, Article 24 of the Constitution provides for heterosexual marriage and cannot be interpreted as providing for same-sex. It is also difficult to interpret Article 13 of the Constitution as guaranteeing the right to demand a specific system, including same-sex marriage. Therefore, the court concluded that the violation of the Article 24 and Article 13 of the Constitution is not acceptable. But as for Article 14, the court says Article 14 of the Constitution prohibits legal discriminatory treatment that is not based on reasonable grounds. And unlike heterosexual couples, homosexual couples are not allowed to marry by law, even if they wish to do so. And sexual orientation is a personal characteristic that cannot be chosen or changed by one's own will. And whether or not there is a rational basis for discriminatory treatment based on such a reason should be carefully examined from the perspective of whether it is truly unavoidable. And the legal effect of the marriage is an important legal benefit that can be enjoyed equally by homosexuals and heterosexuals alike. The important purpose of the Civil Code's provision on marriage is to legally protect the relationship between husband and wife in their joint life while bearing and raising children, but the protection of the joint life of the husband and wife, regardless of whether they have children or not, and regardless of whether they have the will or ability to bear children, is also an important purpose. Homosexuals can live together with the essence of the marriage just like heterosexuals who are married, and we cannot deny them any legal protection. Article 24 of the Constitution cannot be interpreted to deny such protection. So someone says Article 24 says that both sexes, and it means man and woman, therefore, Article 24 prohibits the same-sex marriage. But Sapporo Court says Article 24 cannot be interpreted to deny the same-sex marriage. The Sapporo District Court says there are some factors to consider in the determining the reasonableness. The finding that homosexuality should be suppressed as a mental disorders, but it was completely rejected around 1992. And the introduction of the partner system and increasing in positive opinion about the same-sex marriage and so on. And there is a growing demand in other countries to eliminate the discriminatory treatment based on sexual orientation. And these should be taken into account when considering reasonableness. On the other hand, the fact that there are a small number of the citizens who have negative opinions and values towards same-sex marriage should be taken into account to a limited extent. The conclusion is that the provisions provide the institution of the marriage to heterosexual persons, but fail to offer to homosexual persons any legal means to enjoy, even partially, the legal benefit of the marriage. The differential treatment to that extent must be considered a discriminatory treatment that lacks any reasonable basis. Accordingly, the provision to that extent above violate Article 14, paragraph 1 of the Constitution. So court clearly says not recognizing same-sex marriage, not giving any legal effect of the marriage to same-sex couple, violate the Article 14, the principle of equality of our Constitution. But unfortunately, court says the failure to take legislative action is not illegal under the state compensation law, because it is only relatively recent that the majority of the public consensus has become positive. And there are a variety of legal means to give same-sex couple the legal effect of the marriage. And from 1914 to the present, there has never been a judicial decision on whether or not the same-sex marriage, not legalized same-sex marriage violates the Constitution. This is the first court judgment on this topic in Japan. Therefore, no illegality is recognized under the state compensation law. So the court rejects our allegation that the not legalizing same-sex marriage violates the state compensation law, but the court clearly says the not giving any legal effect of the same-sex of the marriage to a same-sex couple violates the equal protection clause, Article 14 of the Japanese Constitution. This is a great victory, and it must be great push to the parliament, the diet, to legalize the same-sex marriage. We believe that, and we promise that we continue to the movement to legalize the same-sex marriage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kato-san. That was very, very detailed, and obviously the legal procedure is much more complicated than most people realize, but it was very, very interesting. So I just want to go on to the question and answers here. Obviously, there are big cultural differences between Japan and Switzerland, and this is a question for Salome. So both nations are culturally different, but there's definitely a consensus-driven culture, I believe, in both countries. Do you think Switzerland has any lessons for countries like Japan that operate in a similar way or on a similar path as Switzerland?
Yeah, I think so. The first lesson is it takes time. Don't despair. The change in Switzerland started in 1998, and as far as I know, in Japan in 2019. And if you count that together, I hope you will have same-sex marriage before 2042. That would be the 23 years from 1990 on. Don't despair, it takes time, but at the end you will reach it. I think another important point is that the change towards homosexuality in society is as important as to initiate legal and legislative procedures. There is an interdependency between the opinion of the society and the lawmaking process. Legislators can only propose rules that reflect to some extent the opinion of the society, but the society can require the legislator to take action as soon as the society is convinced that there is a lack of legislation. What means that opinion of the society on homosexuality has to be changed? I think one of the most important points is that is the visibility of homosexual people in society. I think you need outings of well-known people, such as politicians, artists, or sports people. As you already mentioned it's very important that in private companies you have LGBT networks, that you are present, that you are visible in the business life. And I think it's important to have articles in newspapers and on TV and in social medias. But last but not least, I think it's very important that each of us, that we come out, that we show our life as homosexual people. Then I think that marriage equality can only be reached in collaboration within the community, but beyond, by collaboration of homosexual men and lesbians, by collaboration of young LGBT people and older LGBT people, by collaboration of the political parties, the ones which are interested, and by all the members of civil society. And then I think it's important to see marriage equality as part of equality on the whole, as the fundamental right which is in the Constitution. It's the reasoning of the court that it's not a special equality we ask for, but it's the equality as guaranteed in the Constitution. I think it's a kind of very easy. If all people are equal, why should there be a difference for marriage if two people of the same sex or of different sex love each other? And last but not least, I think it's important to see the marriage equality as part of equality also in cooperation with other groups who fight for equality, like feminist groups or anti-racism groups. We all ask, we all fight for the same equality. There exists only one equality and not many equalities.
Thank you very much. Kato-san, in Japan, have you seen a change in the attitude of the general public or political institutions since the start of the legal process? This is Valentine's Day 2019. And how much does the public opinion, you've mentioned it already that it's changed, but you said it was 2016, the survey, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
hopefully that, I presume that's changed as well.
And the simultaneous nationwide filing of the marriage for all lawsuit on February 14, 2019 was widely covered by the media and provided an opportunity for the public to learn more about how same-sex couples are disadvantaged by not being allowed to marry. In the Sapporo ruling of March 17, 2021, it was ruled that not recognizing same-sex marriage is a violation of the Constitution. And it was declared that not being allowed to marry is a serious violation of human rights for same-sex couples. According to a poll conducted by Asahi Shimbun immediately after the ruling, 65% of the respondents said that same-sex marriage should be recognized, while 22% said that it should not be recognized. In the previous survey conducted by the same newspaper 6 years ago, 41% of respondents answered the same-sex marriage should be recognized, and 37% answered that it should not. In particular, this time, 66% of those in their 60s answered that the same-sex marriage should be allowed, and this is the first time for the number of those in their 60s who are in favor of same-sex marriage exceeded those who are against in a survey of this kind. Even among supporters of the conservative ruling Liberal Democratic Party, 57% said it should be allowed, higher than the 32% who said it should not be allowed. Thus, we believe that our trial has contributed to increasing the percentage of the people in society who support same-sex marriage.
That is important. Wow.
Yeah, that is very important. And in the political arena as well, the government has repeatedly stated in the Diet Parliament that same-sex marriage is an issue that requires very careful consideration because it concerns the fundamental nature of family in Japan. But recently, there have been signs of the change. Immediately after the Sapporo ruling, the Kome Party, one of the ruling parties in Japan, set up a working team to study same-sex marriage, to begin discussion on same-sex marriage. In the Liberal Democratic Party, the number of lawmakers expressing support for same-sex marriage is gradually increasing, and the party is also moving in earnest towards the enactment of a law for promotion of LGBT understanding, which it has not actively pursued until now. This political movement would not have been possible without our lawsuit. However, on the day of Sapporo ruling, Chief Cabinet Secretary Kato stated at the press conference, "We do not believe that the provisions of the civil code regarding marriage violates the Constitution. And the law to legalizing same-sex marriage is not smooth one. We are appealing against the Sapporo ruling because, given the government reluctance to legalize same-sex marriage, as mentioned earlier, we believe that finalizing this unconstitutional ruling will not immediately lead to the legalization of same-sex marriage, and that a more in-depth ruling at the High Court or even the Supreme Court level will be necessary to support the government and the Diet. This is based on the idea that a more in-depth ruling at the High Court and even the Supreme Court level is needed to push the government and the Diet to legalize the same-sex marriage."
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm quite impressed by the number of people, especially the older people, that have changed their opinions. That is, I mean, especially in Japan, where the older people are the ones that vote. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's a very process. Yes.
Yeah, the percentage of the voter of the elders are very higher than the young people, so it's very important.
Indeed. Wow, yeah. That's great news, but also still a lot of work to be done ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we have a lot of things to do to change the political parties and the Diet members.
Yeah, as well. Yeah. Well, I hope it's not going to take 43 years like in Switzerland, though.
I'd like to add something. As you mentioned, that it's very important that older people also are in favor of same-sex marriage. I think in Switzerland, these are the people who have the highest percentage taking part in the votation, in the vote. So for us, it's very important to convince the people over 60 of the necessity of same-sex marriage.
Indeed. It's very similar, isn't it, with Japan? So in Switzerland, you had this long process. Was there any specific steps that you would recommend first, or does it matter?
Yes, I think the most important thing is to look for allies. Allies among politicians, allies among journalists, allies among artists who put the topic on the agenda, as you do it already now. And the second important point, in my opinion, is the sensitization of the society. The society has to know that we exist. The society has to know that we are in need of recognition of our relationship, and that our relationships have the need to be protected by law. I think our stories have to be known. The stories on happiness, but also the stories on our needs. They have to be told in detail. You have to show examples where what can happen if our relationships are not protected, or if the relationships to our children are not protected. And I think that's the most important point. As soon as the society has the awareness of our needs, the step towards acknowledgement is much, much smaller.
So I want to put this question to both of you. There are activists on all sides of that want to push for equality right away. Others want to compromise on certain points. I know you've mentioned that Switzerland has compromised a bit to get the marriage for all issue out, and of course Japan is not yet there. But maybe Kato-san, you can ask. I can go to you first, but. Should we be compromising, or should we just go on and say we want all our equality first, or is that a bad? I suppose it's maybe a cultural thing, but what would be your suggestion there?
The Sapporo ruling states that not recognizing even some of the legal effects of the marriage is a violation of the constitution to that extent. In other words, the Sapporo ruling does not mean that it is unconstitutional not to recognizing the exact same legal effects of the marriage for same-sex couple as opposite-sex couples. Rather, the Sapporo ruling states that same-sex marriage will not be the same institution as opposite-sex marriage inevitably. Some have argued that it would be sufficient to recognizing marriage for opposite-sex couple, but not for same-sex couple, by creating a system different from marriage, such as civil union or partnership and so on, and granting the same legal effect as marriage. However, the Sapporo ruling states that distinction based on sexual orientation can only be recognized if it is truly unavoidable. Certainly, as the Sapporo ruling also points out, some of the provisions regarding reproduction and biological children may not be directly applicable to same-sex couple. So it is maybe some of them may be truly unavoidable to make a difference to that extent. However, is it really unavoidable to make distinction in other areas, especially in the institution itself between same-sex couples and opposite-sex couple? In the US, there used to be whites-only schools and the blacks-only schools with the same facilities and educational standards. This is called separate but equal. However, the US Supreme Court ruled that such a separation between the whites-only schools and the black-only schools was unconstitutional because it means black people are treated as inferior to white people. This ruling is famous Brown versus Board of Education in the same way, separating the marriage system for opposite-sex couple and civil unions for same-sex couples would be to consider homosexuals as inferior to heterosexuals. We must make sure that both same-sex and opposite-sex couple have access to the same marriage system rather than being satisfied with separate but equal. We believe that this is a point that cannot be compromised. This is my idea.
I presume in Switzerland, the ultimate goal is to have complete equality, but was there, in Switzerland, for example, is there a mood to compromise because of the political, is that wise?
Your initial question was, should we compromise? And let me give a personal answer to this. I think I never reached something in my life, in my personal life, right away. I always had to go step by step. And I prefer compromises to complete failures. But there are points I wouldn't compromise. That the most important point is the name of the civil status. It has to be marriage. As I mentioned in the beginning, if you have two different names for the civil status of heterosexual couples and of homosexual couples, you have always these forced outings. And then I'm convinced that, for instance, in inheritance law, there can't be any differences. And that's very, very important. It's one of the most important points why you need a marriage. Another point is the adoption. There isn't any difference between homosexual couple and a heterosexual couple who want to adopt children. Children need two people who look for them, two people who love them, but irrespective of the sex of these two peoples. Then I also don't see that any difference can be made in tax law. Tax law applies to everybody irrespective of the sex. These are the points which I think they have to be in a legislation from the beginning. Whether or not other points can be added year after year, that I think is a question of the political approach. And I think young people, they want to have everything at once. Older people, they go a little bit slower. I think there is a big danger if you want too much at the same time, that conservative politicians will put position against every change. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I really hope that in 23 years, Japan will have exactly the same rights for homosexual couples and for heterosexual couples, and we in Switzerland, that we also will have the same rights for heterosexual couples and female couples concerning the right to use sperm bank.
So thank you both of you very much for this. I would love to hear more detail about the progress and the future of LGBTQ community, but I think we've run out of time right now. However, before we go, from both of you, if maybe you have a website or something you want to tell us about, if people want to support same-sex marriage in your country. Salome, do you have a website where people can go?
We have a website. It has a German and a French name. That's why it's difficult to tell you. It's www.ehefüralle.ch. On this page, you see our activities and you see our goals. You see the reasons why we want the same-sex marriage. And last but not least, you see how you can spend money to our campaign. Campaigns in Switzerland are very, very, very costly. And especially as our counterparts, the people who are against, they have money.
Thank you very much. Kato-san, where should we go if we want to support same-sex marriage in Japan?
Yeah, please visit our website, Marriage for All Japan website. Please put the Marriage for All Japan on the Google and please search our website. But unfortunately, our English website is now under construction, maybe the coming soon. And please donate and also join the petition to legalize same-sex marriage. And also, we provide the information on our lawsuit at the website. It's called Call4, CALL4. So please search the CALL4 on Google, and we provide and we disclose all the documents and the court ruling in every court on the website. Please check it, and if you want, please donate or send a message and so on. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Salome Zimmermann and Takeharu Kato-san today for your very interesting talk on the subject of same-sex marriage and where each country is and hopefully where we're going soon. Good luck to both of you. Hopefully, next time we meet again, we'll have good news to deliver on this marriage equality front. In the meantime, everyone, please have a great day. Stay safe and healthy. Until next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks
Bye,
so
and
much.
thank you very much, and all the best.